Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 22. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all that they chose. And Jehovah said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for that he also is flesh, yet shall his days be 120 years. The Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown. And Jehovah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented Jehovah that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And Jehovah said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the ground, both man and beast, and creeping things, and birds of the heavens, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Jehovah. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, and perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is how thou shalt make it. The length of the ark 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A light shalt thou make to the ark, and to a cubit shalt thou finish it upward. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof. With lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. And I, behold, I do bring the flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life, from under heaven. Everything that is in the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with thee, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. Of the birds after their kind, and of the cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the ground after its kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he. Explication of Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6, verses 2 to 3. That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all that they chose. Sons of God. This phrase has been interpreted in different ways throughout history. Genesis chapter 6, verses 2 to 3. Some understand it to refer to angelic beings or fallen angels who took human wives. This view draws on passages like Job 1:6 and Jude 1:6 to 7, which speak of angels in contexts of rebellion or leaving their proper domain. Others see sons of God as referring to the godly lineage of Seth, descendants of Adam's righteous son, and daughters of men as representing the ungodly lineage of Cain. This interpretation suggests a moral decline as godly men intermarried with ungodly women, leading to greater corruption. Genesis chapter 6, verses 2 to 3. That they were fair. This reflects a focus on physical attraction, implying that these unions were driven by lust and disregard for spiritual or moral compatibility. They took them wives of all that they chose. This phrase indicates a disregard for God's will in their relationships. The phrase may also imply violence or coercion, highlighting the unchecked sinfulness and abuse of power in these unions. Genesis chapter 6, verses 2 to 3. And Jehovah said, "My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for that he also is flesh. My spirit shall not strive with man forever." God expresses his weariness with humanity's increasing wickedness. The word strive can also be translated as abide or contend, suggesting that God's patience with humanity's rebellion has limits. Genesis chapter 6, verses 2 to 3. For that, he also is flesh. This acknowledges humanity's fallen, sinful nature. Flesh here refers to human weakness and propensity for sin, emphasizing that humanity is corrupt and mortal. This is not just a physical condition, but a moral and spiritual reality. God's decision signals that he will not allow humanity to continue indefinitely in its sinful state without judgment. Genesis chapter 6, verses 2 to 3. Yet shall his days be 120 years. This phrase is commonly interpreted in two ways: a lifespan limit. Some believe God is setting a new limit on human lifespans, reducing them to 120 years as a reflection of humanity's moral corruption. This interpretation aligns with the gradual decrease in lifespans recorded in Genesis after the flood. Genesis chapter 6, verses 2 to 3. A countdown to the flood. Others see this as a countdown, indicating that humanity has 120 years left before God's judgment through the flood. This interpretation underscores God's patience in giving humanity time to repent before the coming destruction. Either way, it emphasizes that God's patience has boundaries and that judgment is imminent. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. The Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and also after that. Who are the Nephilim? The word Nephilim comes from the Hebrew root NPL, which means to fall. They are often interpreted as fallen ones or giants. Some translations, e.g. Septuagint, render the term as giants, leading to the association with extraordinary physical size and strength. Interpretations vary. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. Descendants of the sons of God and daughters of men. Some believe the Nephilim are the offspring of these unions, beings of extraordinary size, power, or influence. Separate beings. Others see the Nephilim as a distinct group already present on the earth before and during the time of these unions, potentially a pre-existing race of giants or warriors. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. Symbolic meaning. A symbolic interpretation suggests the Nephilim represent moral and social corruption, tyrants or oppressors who dominated and exploited others. In those days, and also after that, this phrase suggests that the Nephilim existed both before and after the events described here, possibly reappearing later, e.g. Numbers 13:33, where the Nephilim are mentioned in connection with the giants in Canaan. This continuity adds to their mysterious nature. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. When the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. This reiterates the earlier description of the unions between the sons of God and the daughters of men. Genesis 6:2. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. These unions and the resulting offspring are often seen as contributing to the corruption of humanity, either through their direct actions or the broader societal decay they symbolize. If the Nephilim are indeed the offspring of these unions, it underscores their extraordinary nature, as these beings are described in superlative terms. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. The same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown. Mighty men. This phrase indicates individuals of great strength, influence, or power. They could be warriors, leaders, or figures of extraordinary reputation. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. Men of renown. This term suggests they were famous or infamous, remembered for their deeds, whether good or evil. Their renown could reflect either their physical prowess and dominance or the corruption and violence they brought to the earth. These descriptions highlight the impact these individuals had on society, contributing to the moral decline that led to God's decision to bring the flood. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6. And Jehovah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth. God's observation. The verse begins with God's direct assessment of humanity. His seeing reflects divine omniscience. God is fully aware of the moral state of the world. This echoes his earlier observation of creation as very good, Genesis 1:31. But now he sees it as deeply corrupted, Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6. Wickedness was great. This phrase emphasizes the extent of human depravity. Sin is no longer isolated to individuals, but has spread across the earth, corrupting humanity as a whole. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6. And that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Every imagination of the thoughts of his heart. This highlights the comprehensive nature of human sin. It is not just actions that are wicked, but also the inner thoughts, desires, and intentions. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6. Only evil continually. The repetition underscores the depth and persistence of sin. Humanity's thoughts are not occasionally evil, but are consistently and exclusively so. This speaks to the corruption of human nature and the inability of humanity in its fallen state to align with God's will. The heart, in biblical terms, represents the core of a person, their mind, will, and emotions. This description shows that sin affects every aspect of a person's being. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6. And it repented Jehovah that he had made man on the earth. It repented Jehovah. This phrase can be challenging. The word repented, from the Hebrew nacham, suggests a change of attitude or regret. However, it does not imply that God made a mistake, as he is omniscient and perfect. Instead, it reflects God's sorrow and the depth of his emotional response to humanity's sin. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6. This anthropomorphic language, describing God in human terms, helps readers understand the gravity of the situation from God's perspective. It reveals his deep grief over the broken relationship with his creation. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6. And it grieved him at his heart. God's grief. The use of grieved indicates profound emotional pain. God's heart, his inner being, is deeply affected by humanity's rebellion. This grief reflects the relational nature of God. He created humanity for fellowship, and their sin causes him sorrow. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6. This verse shows that God is not a distant or detached creator. God is intimately connected to his creation, and human sin deeply affects him. God's grief reflects both his holiness, which is offended by sin, and his love, which mourns the loss of communion with humanity. Genesis chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. And Jehovah said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the ground. I will destroy man. This marks a moment of divine judgment. God's decision to bring destruction arises from the pervasive wickedness and rebellion of humanity described in the preceding verses, Genesis 6:5 through 6. The term destroy, Hebrew machah, conveys the idea of erasing or wiping out, reflecting the severity of the judgment. Genesis chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. Whom I have created. This phrase emphasizes God's role as creator, highlighting the tragic reversal of his original intent for humanity. The beings he lovingly formed have now so corrupted themselves that God resolves to undo his creation. Genesis chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. Both man and beast and creeping things and birds of the heavens. The judgment extends beyond humanity to include animals, creeping things, and birds. This reflects the interconnectedness of creation. Humanity's sin has far-reaching consequences, corrupting not only human relationships, but also the natural world. Genesis chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. This echoes the curse on creation in Genesis 3:17 to 19, where the ground itself was affected by human disobedience. Here, the corruption has spread so widely that God deems it necessary to start over. Genesis chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. For it repenteth me that I have made them. This statement echoes Genesis 6:6, where God expresses sorrow and grief over humanity's sin. The word repenteth, Hebrew nacham, conveys God's deep emotional response to the state of his creation. Genesis chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. For it repenteth me that I have made them. This statement echoes Genesis 6:6, where God expresses sorrow and grief over humanity's sin. The word repenteth, Hebrew nacham, conveys God's deep emotional response to the state of his creation. Genesis chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Jehovah. But Noah. This marks a turning point in the narrative. Amid widespread corruption, Noah stands out as a beacon of hope. The contrast between Noah and the rest of humanity underscores God's mercy and his willingness to preserve a remnant. Genesis chapter 6, verses 7 to 8. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Jehovah. But Noah. This marks a turning point in the narrative. Amid widespread corruption, Noah stands out as a beacon of hope. The contrast between Noah and the rest of humanity underscores God's mercy and his willingness to preserve a remnant. Genesis chapter 6, verses 11 to 12. And the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Corrupt before God. The word corrupt, Hebrew shachath, conveys the idea of moral decay, ruin, or destruction. This corruption is not hidden, but openly visible before God, highlighting his omniscience and the seriousness of humanity's sin. Genesis chapter 6, verses 11 to 12. Filled with violence. Violence, hamas in Hebrew, refers to cruelty, injustice, and oppression. It indicates that humanity's interactions had become dominated by selfishness, harm, and disregard for others. This phrase shows the societal breakdown resulting from humanity's estrangement from God. The pairing of corruption and violence illustrates how sin affects both the inner moral state of individuals and outward social relationships. The earth is not only morally bankrupt, but also physically marred by injustice and violence. Genesis chapter 6, verses 11 to 12. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. God saw. This echoes earlier in Genesis, where God observed his creation and pronounced it very good. Genesis 1:31. Now God sees a stark contrast. His once perfect creation has been defiled. Genesis chapter 6, verses 11 to 12. Behold, it was corrupt. The repetition underscores the extent of the problem. Corruption was not isolated but pervasive, affecting the entire earth and all its inhabitants. Genesis chapter 6, verses 11 to 12. For all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. All flesh. This phrase refers to humanity and potentially includes animals, which may have been affected by humanity's sin. The widespread corruption demonstrates that no one was exempt from the moral decay. Genesis chapter 6, verses 11 to 12. For all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. All flesh. This phrase refers to humanity and potentially includes animals, which may have been affected by humanity's sin. The widespread corruption demonstrates that no one was exempt from the moral decay. Genesis chapter 6, verses 17 to 18. And I, behold, I do bring the flood of waters upon the earth. I, behold. The repetition of I emphasizes God's active role in bringing about the flood. This is not a random natural disaster, but a deliberate act of divine judgment. Genesis chapter 6, verses 17 to 18. The flood of waters. The flood symbolizes both judgment and cleansing. Water, which had been part of God's creative act in Genesis 1, now becomes the instrument of destruction, reflecting the reversal of creation due to humanity's corruption. Genesis chapter 6, verses 17 to 18. To destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven. Everything that is in the earth shall die. Destroy all flesh. This phrase highlights the comprehensive nature of the judgment. All living creatures, both human and animal, are subject to the flood because of humanity's pervasive sin. Genesis 6:12 to 13. Genesis chapter 6, verses 17 to 18. Breath of life. This refers to the living beings God originally breathed life into. Genesis 2:7. The judgment affects all creatures with this divine breath, underscoring the seriousness of humanity's sin, which has brought death to all creation. Everything that is in the earth shall die. The finality of this statement emphasizes the totality of the destruction. It reflects the gravity of humanity's rebellion and the devastating consequences of sin. Genesis chapter 6, verses 17 to 18. But I will establish my covenant with thee. But this transition introduces hope amid judgment. God's plan includes not only destruction, but also preservation and renewal through Noah. Genesis chapter 6, verses 17 to 18. My covenant with thee. This is the first mention of a covenant in the Bible. A covenant is a binding agreement initiated by God. Here, it signifies God's promise to preserve Noah, his family, and a remnant of creation to ensure the continuity of life after the flood. This covenant underscores God's faithfulness and mercy even in the midst of judgment. Genesis chapter 6, verses 17 to 18. Thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives. God's covenant extends to Noah's immediate family, showing his care for the preservation of human relationships and the continuation of humanity. This also emphasizes the communal nature of God's salvation, as it includes not just individuals, but families. Genesis chapter 6, verse 19. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, every living thing of all flesh. This phrase highlights the inclusivity of God's plan. It is not only humanity, but also the animal kingdom that God seeks to preserve through the ark. It reflects his concern for the entirety of his creation. Genesis chapter 6, verse 19. 2 of every sort. The pairing of animals ensures the continuation of each species after the flood. This detail underscores God's foresight in providing for the future renewal of life on earth. Genesis chapter 6, verse 19. To keep them alive with thee. To keep them alive. This phrase reveals the purpose of the command, preservation. God's plan includes not only judgment, but also the continuation of life. Genesis chapter 6, verse 19. With thee. The animals are to be preserved alongside Noah and his family. This implies that Noah has a stewardship role, caring for and protecting the animals during their time on the ark. It echoes humanity's original mandate in Genesis 1:28 to have dominion over and care for creation. Genesis chapter 6, verse 19. They shall be male and female. The specification of male and female ensures the possibility of reproduction after the flood. This detail reflects God's design for the continuity of life, rooted in the complementary nature of male and female pairs. It underscores God's orderly and purposeful plan for renewal, ensuring that the earth will be repopulated after the judgment.